Everyone to the 12th and final meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee for this triennium. I'd like to declare the meeting open. Just a quick reminder to everyone that we are being live streamed, and please use your microphones. I would now invite members to join me in saying the karakia. Microphones optional. Toru wha. Whakatakataho ki te uru. Whakatakataho ki te tonga. Kia mā kene ki. Taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura. He tio, he huka, he hohu. Moving on to apologies. If it hasn't been made abundantly clear, we have an apology from Warren Allen. And I also note Councillor Tracy Johnson has a leave of absence, and Mayor Baker and Felicity are joining us via Zoom. So good morning to you both. Are there any other apologies from anybody? No, I think we're good there. So I move that we accept the apologies. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Trillin. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Fantastic. Moving on to public participation. No request to speak in public this morning, so we will move on to conflict of interests. And like Warren, we'll just pause for a moment and think about any conflicts that may have arisen since the last meeting. It's something that we've got to be mindful of, especially around this table, but I do believe there are no further conflicts to add. So we will move through to extraordinary business, which there are no items of. So finally into some juicy material. Confirmation of the minutes from our meeting held on the 19th of June 2025. I move that we confirm the minutes as a true and accurate record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Leggett. Thank you very much. Any corrections from anyone? No? Fantastic. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Very nice. Moving straight into it. All right. First item on our agenda today, 7.1, the Health and Safety Quarterly Report. I move to get it on the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duncan. Sam, would you like to come to the table? Just give us a brief overview of some key trends, please.
Morena koutou, and through you, Chair. I'll take the report as read and highlight 4 key things from the report itself. Number one, threatening behaviour obviously is escalating still and remains in that manner in this current quarter as well. We've reported on it was reported as a physical assault on a staff member during the particular reporting period, and that is currently going through the court system as we speak to navigate through that particular space. But we are starting to see a lot more closer interactions of threatening behaviour towards staff. We are starting to note a lot of that behaviour is being directed at some of our contractors now. There's more reports of our waste contractors receiving abuse from members of public about various disputes of what's in or out of those particular bins, but also our front counter staff remain a bit of a target when people come in to pay for their animal fees and debts, etc. So this is something that we are looking at currently, of other de-escalation training, other opportunities to support our teams to navigate their particular risks in those environments, namely animal control is a good example of a bit of work happening in that space to identify any process improvements to help support the team there. The second point, obviously in the period there has been a heightened number of breathing related issues reported. PCA through that period reported 39 incidents in that quarter. Throughout each of the incidents, the team would undertake the relevant processes to follow up on what were the causes of those issues. Throughout each of them, there were no mechanical or chemical outliers or things that were beyond what would normally want to see. So everything was working as it should. Through that, the club have requested a few additional actions from Porirua City Council, which we have agreed to, namely further testing at the time that they are swimming in the swim lanes. Previously, we had done testing during the peak hours of the pool when you have a lot of people. Of course, our swim club members are generally in there when it's fairly quiet, so we're going to do some more testing throughout that period. But we're also working together where the club have agreed with us our request to review their own training program, whether there is any contributing factors there with asthma-induced breathing issues. So there's going to be an ongoing piece of work between the club and us over the next few months as we navigate those in a collaborative way. The third item to note is our transition to the New Zealand Guide to Temporary Traffic Management. So we have included that. There is a trial underway or about to go underway in the transport space to transition us away from the COP TTM, the Code of Practice for Temporary Traffic Management, which was quite vocally not agreed with by many in the public, too many road cones, etc. So we are working with our contractor on transitioning council's processes to the new NZGTTM. And the final update is you will note an increase in EAP usage. A lot of that is tied to quite a bit of our organisational changes that have occurred throughout the last 6 months. Of course, there have been a number of organisational reviews in various teams, and some of those staff have been offered the opportunity to go through that whole wellbeing space to make sure that there is an opportunity there to discuss things if people were affected or not, as we've seen the case. But I think that's all the updates that I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sam. Open it for questions. I've got Councillor Trillin.
Thanks very much, Chair. The pool, was hoping that we were, based off the data from the last round, getting away from that. Good to see that we're still engaging with the club and following up the actions that they've requested. I just had a few clarifying follow-ups. So the first, we've got data over the last 12-month period. Do we have any data that goes further back than that on a number of complaints?
Yes, we do. We can go back as far as PeopleSafe, our incident reporting system, has been used, back through to 2019, I believe. So that is easily collatable. We'll just need to do a bit of work. We haven't really done this granular level of incident reporting pre-2022.
Okay. The reason I ask is I would be interested to see if there are any seasonal trends in this particular issue. With it being as low as it was, only one reported in the previous quarter and it's spiked now. Do we have a clear idea of whether that's because that there's just been more reporting, they haven't reported it last time, or do we know if there's any trends we can see on a yearly basis?
Through the Chair, we can explore a bit more of that. For example, the current reporting period, there have been one PCA-related breathing issue over the last 3 months. So in terms of seasonal trends, it's been quite difficult, but I can pull that together quite easily to identify what those might look like, if there are trends. It's been quite challenging. The previous period, for example, there were 39 breathing incidents spread over 12 days. If you would think there would be trends, it would probably be a bit more frequent than that, as opposed to the frequency that's currently been at. And we've seen that trend over the last number of years as well. It's been very hard to correlate breathing incidents with times. Sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's in the afternoon. The one trend we have identified, however, is that all of these breathing incidents occur at the latter part of their training sessions, the last 15 minutes. So that's one of the few trends that we've identified, which is why we've asked the club to review their training program.
Okay, that's really helpful, thank you. And that actually mostly answers my next question, which was in terms of how widespread the data is. Do we know the two subparts of that? Does it come in bursts or is it sustained? And it sounds like it's coming in bursts as opposed to it being sustained. And the other is 39 reports. Is that 39 individuals, or is that from 3 or 4 people that have each made a report, 5 or 10 times?
I don't have that detail off the top of my head, but there are a few common variables who report on a frequent basis. I'll have to go back and flesh that one out.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's everything for me for now.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks for the report. It's pretty comprehensive. And speaking about the pool, I want to commend you there for the way that you've handled that with them and involving the club in what they're doing there. I thought that was a good effort, that, and a good way to handle it. So that's just my comment on that. Page 30, a key highlight was the knife-related incident in the car park. That was concerning. What was the outcome of that?
I believe the chap may have been arrested on the night. I don't recall the exact details. It was a school-related function, and I believe peers not in agreement. I'm looking at Ruben, who may be more across it.
Through the chair, I can talk to that. It was during a Careers Expo event. They weren't people that were necessarily involved with any of the stalls. It was an altercation between two people that had previous history. A young man had spotted somebody that he had taken offence with on a previous occasion and was taking retribution. That the actual attack itself happened in the car park. We do have footage of them that was passed on to the police. Police have apprehended that, or had apprehended that person and are dealing with it now.
That's great, thanks for that. I've got one last question, was page 34. Testing of gloves after a worker developed an infection from a cut. Were they wearing gloves at the time, or was it just testing those after the event to see that people use them? I mean, it was a bit confusing.
My memory is a bit hazy on this one, but what I recall was the tests of the gloves were to identify gloves that helped reduce the likelihood of cuts. So the harder type, I can't recall what the fabric is or the material is, but much more durable gloves to support staff.
Great, thanks very much. That's it.
Councillor Philo.
Thank you, Sam. My question is about 3.3. I believe it's on page 30. So I note that there were no formal complaints noted around bullying and harassment for this period. My question, though, is could you please outline the process for when a staff member does report bullying? Where does it go? Who sees it? And how do councillors get assurance that it's acted on?
Okay, through you, Chair. We do have a policy that outlines the process that staff can undertake. In my memory, again, you're challenging my memory on this one. One of the options is that they deal with it themselves. So a good course of action is trying to manage it yourself and addressing the person directly. If that is not achievable for various reasons, it might be your boss and you're a bit intimidated, etc., then you have the opportunity to go to another manager or to your general manager to raise your concern to address it in that manner. Ideally, we want to try and manage these issues before the formal arrangements occur. More often than not, it isn't bullying that people are observing. Of course, bullying is a repeated action as opposed to a one-off, very harsh performance review. And so there are some of those mechanisms that we have to work our way through. The third and fourth steps in the process are the more formal routes where there's a formal complaint made to the HR team or through to the health and safety team to then address what the allegations are in a fairly open manner. Of course, the accused has to be notified of that particular formal complaint. And then, of course, the last option that we have is an externally led bullying, harassment or discrimination complaint. And sorry, I've forgotten the other questions, Councillor, sorry.
No, that was my question was how do councillors get assurance that it's acted on, but you've outlined the process. So if a staff member goes to their direct manager or even the ELT, the top one, and it doesn't go anywhere, they then can go to you or to HR.
And take the formal route.
Take the formal route. Okay, and then if that doesn't happen, then what was the external?
The external is if a staff member weren't comfortable or happy with the process that council has been taken, and of course they have the opportunity to go to an external entity, be it the Human Rights Commission for various things, or to the Employment Tribunal or some of those other parties.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Leggett.
Yeah, thanks for the report, Sam. Can I just ask, this may have been asked before, but I can't remember, the breathing problems in the pool, have you looked at any other pools around with a similar setup to see whether they have experienced similar problems and what they've done?
Through the chair, yes, over the last 3 years, part of the process was to reach out to other pools. There was only one other pool in our region that utilised ozone as a part of their chlorine type of environment, which is the Regional Aquatic Centre. So our aquatics manager did reach out quite early on in the piece to understand whether there are similarities. No is the short answer to that. There haven't been similarities there, nor have there been similarities across many or any other pools that we can be made aware of that have been experiencing these sorts of issues in such a frequent and or infrequent manner over the last 8 years since it was first reported in 2018.
Baffling. Let's hope you get to the bottom of it. Second, it's not a question, it's an observation I have asked before. In this whole report, there is some trend information, but they're very short trends. Is it possible, and would it be useful, given the way data may have been collected previously, is it possible to have longer term trend information? Because it's good to understand whether things are improving over time or not, or going up and down or whatever. So I just ask whether that's possible. I mean, sure, you've got to be able to compare eggs with eggs, of course. But
No, we can certainly do that.
thank you.
Mayor Baker.
Thank you. Just a quick staff and the incidents that are actually rising out there in the communities when they're on their jobs. Have we thought about actually doing some or putting an article even in our newsletter about the abuse that is rising and asking people to be nice? Because actually more people are saying they see things but they never hear anything. So if we just remind people to be nice to our staff and say, hey, we are listening and we're onto it, it's sort of like a reminder to people to be friendly. And I know you can't really answer that, Sam, but it's just a suggestion. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any further questions from anybody? No? Fantastic. Just remind you that we're just receiving one recommendation, that is to receive the report. I've had a seconder, so I will now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much, Sam. Keep up the great work in the health and safety space. Item 7.2, the Ernst & Young closing report. I move the motion to get the report on the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Leggett, thank you very much. Officers come forward, Ian and Peter.
And Graham, that's the whole crew this morning.
And Graham.
So thank you, Chair. Look, I'll take the reports as read, but I just want to start by saying, you know, presenting the annual report is one of the highlights of a finance person's calendar. So this is a great moment for myself and our team. Look, paper 7.2 and 7.3 are quite linked. So perhaps if I just step back for the moment and just talk about the annual plan in general before I pass it over to Sam. I think it's been a great year as far as our controllable expenditures and so on. But there are two things that I really just want to kind of highlight out of the Statement of Comprehensive Revenue and Expenditure, which is on page 83 of the annual report, if you want to follow along with me. There are two really big numbers, I think, that really deserve some kind of mention straight off the bat. One is the revaluation of the property and plant and equipment line. In our annual plan, we had allowed for a 38 million increase in the values, and what we saw with our three waters was a 206, almost 207 million dollar increase in values. And this was something that I signalled in an earlier paper to the Audit and Risk Committee. We prepared the revaluation with an effective date of 31 December 24. So we had a little bit of time to consider and process and what that because we had heard of other councils who had similar increases and significant increases. So we got onto that pretty quickly. We've given you advice about that, but just to remind you that this really was around about a 40% increase in the value of our Three Waters network, which is fairly significant. And what that does is it has a flow-on impact in our depreciation calculations for the year. So actually in a full normal year, that, just so you're understanding the significance, it's around about a $7.5 million increase in depreciation. Now, we only had, a 6-month period to account for that, so it's, half of that value would have been impacted in the 24-25 year. But it gives you some idea of the quantum and the significance of that singular I'll call it a transaction, but that singular piece of work that had a major impact on our Statement of Comprehensive Revenue and Expenses and our balance sheet. The other issue I'd really like to pull out is the revenue from vested assets. So that's something that we had planned in the plan, $74 million approximately, and the number that actually we received was just under 15 million. Now the big item here, and it's another very significant. I was going to use the word whopper, but I'll be more formal. The very significant item here is the Bothamley Park wastewater pipe. It did not achieve practical completion in the 24-25 year, so therefore we did not vest it, or it was not vested to us. And at $70 million, that's a really, really big, significant number. Just as an FYI, I believe it vested to us last week, so it's a timing thing. But when you look at the numbers, the pure numbers, that's a significant reason for that result there. Actually, if you take away 70 million from the annual plan, what's left is quite a smallish number, and we actually received close to 15 million. So actually, other areas of the asset base were increased by vested assets. So land under roads and reserves and things like that, we actually received more than we thought we would. So there is some tempering of that, the impact of that Bothamley Park item. So those are two, just to reiterate, those are two really, really significant issues that impacted on 24-25, but they are non-cash. There's no cash involved in those transactions. There is no impact on our cash flows, but they are in the profit and loss, or the Statement of Comprehensive Revenue and Expense. But my appraisal of the rest of the, if you like, the standard operational expenditure across the city, I'm talking about personnel, I'm talking about contractors, I'm talking about consultants, I'm talking about those things that we do have direct control of. They've actually come out fairly close, if not better, than annual plan, which I think is a great result for management, and it's something that pleases my heart as an accountant. Look, that's the summary. We'll go back to item 7.2, and that's the introduction for Sam now to talk through the closeout report.
Cool, thank you, Ian. I'll get Kieran to talk to our report, but really just wanted to highlight that with officers we've made really good progress. Every 3 years with elections the process runs a bit earlier. We've had the very significant waters revaluation to traverse in this year's audit, and to be here with a pretty good copy of the annual report for consideration by the committee with a pretty short to-do list to finalise, just really where we would like to be. And so that's a great thing. So Kieran will chat you through our report and then I'll assist with any questions.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Chair. So I'll take our paper as read, but I might just talk to our executive summary, which is page 44 of your papers, or page 3 of our report. In terms of overall status, so as Sam articulated, we are progressing well in the audit, as expected. We have received very good support from PCC holistically across all the teams that we've worked with, whether it be to answer questions, to supporting information that we're trying to get. That's been well appreciated from the audit team throughout that. In terms of the 10 outstanding items that we have in Appendix B of our report, 3 of those are formalities which will occur upon adoption of the annual report, so those will happen in future date. Of the residual 7, 4 of those we have now completed, and of the 3 that we're still working through with management, none of those are things that are of concern. They're just things that we need to work through, and given where we are in the process, they're not untoward to be where we are. And if I elaborate on them a little bit more, it's more so on the updated annual report, making sure that the numbers are matching and aligning to our work, and also just some more clarification of our work over the funding impact statement, so the broader annual report pieces. So nothing to highlight of concern in those outstanding matters. And then on the bottom left of that piece, which is our main areas of focus, I'll touch on a couple of those on the infrastructure assets. So as Ian highlighted, the Three Waters valuation occurred in the year. Our work predominantly focused on really ensuring the reasonableness of the underlying unit rates and overhead costs that are utilised in deriving that value, which has gone up so high. We did that work through talking to the valuers, being Aon, but also included Wellington Water, who are part of that process. We've completed the work over those unit costings, and they are reasonable. They are based on recent costs that councils in the region are actually having to incur to do this work, so they're based on real life costs. But on top of that, Aon also overlaid that with a reasonableness assessment on benchmarking kind of against the other councils' unit rates that they are seeing through their work, and they all seem to be within a reasonable range. So that closed out that piece. The other piece on the waters that's worth just highlighting is obviously the progress on the water reform and the local water done well. So the financials include a good note around the progress of council in that space. The Office of the Auditor General has provided guidance to councils around what should be included in that, but also provided guidance to auditors to have what we call an emphasis of matter paragraph in our audit report. It's really just an additional paragraph in our audit report that will just point readers' attention to the note that management have included in their financial statements. It doesn't qualify our opinion in any way, shape or form, so it's still an unqualified opinion, but it's just an additional paragraph to help highlight to readers the significance of where the Three Waters are and the impact that it'll have on councils, or the uncertainty of that impact. In terms of the non-financial information section of our audit report, at the time of providing our report, you'll see that we included a note saying we're still underway with some of our testing and that we would give a verbal update. So I can confirm we are finished with that work now, and there is nothing in that to bring to the attention of the committee. And the last one on the areas of audit focus to highlight is just within our provisions section, and it's the landfill aftercare provision, and less so on the actual numbers that are in the financials, because those are reflective of cost estimates and a calculation that's appropriate and correct, but more so just to highlight or remind the committee that there's uncertainty as to that consenting process, which is not been completely done yet. If that was not to be able to be obtained from a new consenting, that would change the dollar value significantly, because you're bringing those costs a lot further forward than what they are. But we've discussed it with the team, and the current expectation is that there will be a consent given before the current one expires in 2030. So just to highlight, there is the uncertainty of that, but we have completed our procedures on that piece. And then just maybe the other piece to talk through on our executive summary is just to highlight from the audit differences, which are the top right side of our report. We haven't found there's no unadjusted audit differences through the audit as we stand today. There's some minor things that we picked up through the process, which has been reflected in the financial statements that you see. And there's a few items that we're working with on the broader annual report, which will be corrected in the following versions. But I might pause there for questions.
Fantastic. I'll open the floor for questions. Councillor Duncan.
Thanks very much, all of you. My first one, just as you're talking about the Bottomley Park depreciation and that, can I just ask, does that also affect the insurances for us as well?
Given that we didn't own the asset until this financial year, it hasn't affected the insurance for this last financial year. So it's only when we take ownership of it, and it will be picked up again in the valuations of the. I think we're talking about is Phyllis in the room? Yeah. It depends on what the value they transfer it at, but probably when we get into the insurance area, it needs to be covered under the new insurance scheme going forward.
Yep.
And I think Phyllis has already been in touch with the with Aon in respect to that, so they know it's coming.
Great. Okay. Thanks. On page 48, you tell us you're still waiting on PCC reconciliation of Wellington Water complaints to PCC. Is that resolved?
Yes, it is.
Great. Page 46, rates and other revenue. In your EY perspective there, you're testing whether rates invoicing to ratepayers was accurately based on the approved rate strike. Is that to do with the problem we had with people who had direct credit to their rates account and found them, but they were in arrears? Does that cover that area as well?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
The rate strikes around council formally adopts rates and seeing that they flow through to the amounts invoiced to ratepayers.
So it had nothing to no relevance to that part of it. Okay, final one. Page 56, talking about AI. We hear a lot of horror stories about AI and how insecure information is on the cloud. Are you satisfied that that you can secure our information?
Yes, we are, and happy to provide further information if there were particular areas of interest.
Great, thanks very much.
Any further questions for EY? All right, fantastic. Oh, Councillor Leggett.
Just so the aftercare provision, I guess, I mean, there's a whole lot of things swirling around that, and that will probably next year we'll be able to have some further updated information, I guess. It's just that you haven't flagged some of the things that are going on that might affect the aftercare.
Council hasn't even considered any of, I mean, there's obviously some forthcoming work that we will have to do that will land in the new train,
Yeah, and it doesn't
training.
need to be reflected in here because it hasn't been considered yet.
Yeah, well.
Formally. Okay.
Just to add to that, I think our focus has really been the judgment taken by council's not unreasonable.
Yep.
It's consistent with the annual plan, but there's just uncertainty. So I think the team's done a really good job in the financial statements to highlight the actual amounts you'll pay are quite large numbers, and the product of discounting is the impact on the current year's financial statements are quite small.
Yep.
But if you bring that forward, that accelerates. So if if you're going to incur the same costs regardless but earlier, your ability to fund it over a condensed time frame might have an impact on ratepayers. So it's really just highlighting that this is in the wind. We don't think the judgment's unreasonable, but people have the information to understand there's a range of outcomes.
Yep, great, thanks. And just one final thing, just to reiterate so it's clear to all of us, there's nothing that we should be worried about as councillors looking forward as a result of all this. All the issues you've raised have been dealt with.
So there's nothing that isn't in our report that we need to bring to council's attention. At the next meeting, we'll bring a report to management where we have recommendations and management's responses on actions, whether complete or things they intend to do.
Thanks.
Councillor Philo.
So my question is on, it's on page 46, and it's related to the rates and other revenue. So in particular, the EY perspective, where we're talking about how, with the rate strike and how it relates to the underlying QV valuation data. My question is, what about, or what happens when the QV data is incorrect? Because it's come to my attention over the last few weeks that there's a number of incorrect data with QV. One house, which is a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, was listed as an 8-bedroom, 4-bathroom. So I know it's, that's my question. It's a little left field, but.
So QV perform the formal rating valuation, and there's a process for ratepayers to review the valuation assigned to them and get any known errors corrected. Council's required to use that rating valuation in its rate strike, and so we rely on the data that QV has. We've traversed this year and last a few areas where it required effort to understand differences in lands, the particulars, I think the number of pans or water connections at properties. Those, having done the work, have been insignificant to the financial statements, but obviously impact ratepayers at their own personal circumstances, the amounts they might have to pay. But that, because it's not material to the financial statements, we've left those with management to consider how they might address that.
So have I understood it right? What you're saying, it's sort of up to the individual house owner to correct the data with QV?
Yeah, because it's a process that QV is responsible for, and where it impacts someone's rating valuation, there is a process to object to your rating valuation if you have an issue with it.
Thanks, Sam.
Perfect. Thank you all very much. And thank you, Sam and Kieran. Felicity.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if this was best directed to Sam or to Ian, but just a question around the contingent liability relating to risk pool that you mentioned in your report and is in the annual report. Just wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the likelihood of that arising and what this sort of range of liability that could be for Porirua.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for that question. I mean, risk pool is, coming to the end of a fairly long chapter in New Zealand. It relates to weather tightness and so on, those types of claims. I am aware that there are a couple, I think off the top of my head, outstanding fairly significant claims that are still going through court action. Until that court action is finalised, I can't give you specifics, and indeed nobody can. And that's why it's part of that contingent liability. But one would expect clarity over the next 12 months as those court processes come, to a conclusion, and liability is determined, and then split across the various members of that scheme. So yeah, does that answer?
I'll add to that if you like, through the chair. We did have a look at. Risk pool did indicate that there would be probably another call on us before the end of the year. We did a brief calculation in terms of the size of that. It was under $50,000 as far as I can recollect. We've had larger calls on us previously, so that's what we understand at the moment. That there's a potential call on us towards the end of the year at some stage. Is that correct, colleagues? Yep.
So I understand that Porirua ceased being a member of Risk Pool. I think it's 2015. So the large action that's going through the courts, was that when you were a member? Would you be part of that liability if it did come
correct.
through?
Yeah, so Risk Pool is effectively being wound up in terms of providing any further insurance. So these are outstanding insurance claims.
Yeah, and it was when you were a member, not after 2015.
Correct.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for that clarification.
Fantastic. Thank you all very much for a good, robust discussion around the Ernst & Young report, and thanks again, Kieran and Sam, for your input today. I will now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried. Item 7.3, which we've already had a nice little introduction on, is the Porirua City Council Annual Report to 30 June 2025. I'll move the motion to get the report on the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duncan, thank you very much. Peter, Graham, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read, and the opening comments stand for this paper too.
Fantastic. Opening the floor for questions. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks for this. Look, I've only been a councillor for 9 years, so there are still things that I don't understand. Page 71, item 11 and 15, interest rate swaps, net loss of 8.4 million. These are non-cash and not included in the LTP. So is it a loss or not?
Through you, Chair, it is a loss in value. It's like when we revalue, physical assets. You have to recognise the movement through the statement of comprehensive income and expenditure, just like this is a revaluation of some financial instruments. They do have value. They're easy to market, and we're required to process through the statement of comprehensive income and expenditure movement in the value of that portfolio of financial instruments.
Through the chair, Councillor Duncan, let me put my spin on this. If you bought a house at the height of the property market and you are currently sitting on that property but you haven't sold it, it's effectively an unrealised loss. If you sell it in the future and it goes up in value, you'll potentially get an unrealised gain. Well, you could have a realised gain or realised loss at the point you sell it. So that's what's going on here.
Good.
Now I understand.
Sorry, good. Sorry, I just so excited about the question. But I think it's important to note that 2 years ago we recognised an increase in value of around about 10 million. So this is things that go up do come down, and this is the the quid pro quo.
Anybody else? Felicity.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. Well, one question, one comment. On page 130, in terms of the service performance reports, measures, I just wondered if you could explain why when you've got a result that's in A, which I assume means not available, it's an achieved, you have it as achieved. So I just wonder if you could talk me through, there's two on that page in respect of stormwater where you've got result in A and then achieved.
Through the chair, Felicity, could you just confirm the page number again?
Oh, so it's page 130
Oh, 130, thank you.
of the board pack.
And, okay, right. And you're referring to the second line, not achieved, not applicable.
Yeah, so
And it says it's achieved.
yeah, and there's two that do that, and I just wasn't sure how to interpret that.
Through the chair, could I just
yes, good
ask
question.
Kieran to come up and answer that question, please?
Through the chair, sorry, it took me a second to find that. Those ones relate to flooding events, and there were no flooding events, and so the result is not available. But I believe through the audit, we accept that that is an achieve because there was simply no event.
Okay, because there was one other somewhere, and I can't remember exactly where it was like no result. Yeah, it was a different way of reporting out. That's fine. That explains it. And if the auditors are fine, that's all good. My other comment really is that the summary report that has financial highlights on pages 237 through to 240. I think I mentioned this last year. I find those really helpful and a really good way to provide a picture of the council's finances. And I just wondered if it was possible to include them in the main annual report, just because they're a really informative way of presenting financial highlights. So just a comment, really. I think I mentioned it before. There's probably a good reason why not, but I personally find those really useful to get the big picture of the money. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair, just responding to that. I think I see Mia nodding her head, so we can make that happen.
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Leggett.
Sorry, yes, I agree with Felicity as well. But I think this is a great overall annual report with some really good information in it for people and some good trends as well in terms of what we've achieved. I just wanted to ask, maybe I've asked this before, do we have to take the information about population, which is the 2023 census, and we reach the conclusion that our population is growing? Is it still growing, just out of interest? What's the trend over the last...
Through the chair, I mean, it's a difficult thing to get the exact numbers, but all of our projections and from the census is, yes, slower than it was in the 2010s, but yes, still growing.
Okay, but so we're required to use the census data, are we?
I don't believe there's any requirement in that section that we use the census for that, as it is the most exact. But yeah, we could use our projections as well.
Yeah, okay. No, I just wondered that whether the trend was still continuing. Maybe we should say that growth may have slowed over the subsequent time period, given what's happened across the rest of New Zealand and particularly Wellington.
Fantastic. Well, if there's no further discussion, I will put the motion with the 6 recommendations. Recommendation 1, receive the report. Note the comments of the external auditors pertaining to the preparation and accuracy of the annual report 24-25. Agree that the appropriate information and approach has been taken in respect to the processes to produce the annual report 24-25. Agree to the accounting treatments proposed for the annual report 24-25. Note the overview of the financial and non-financial results for the year ending 30 June 2025. And recommendation 6, endorse the adoption of the annual report 24-25 and summary annual report 24-25 at the 2nd of October 2025 council meeting. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you all very much. Item 7.4, the 2024-34 long-term plan amendment and 2026-27 annual plan approach. I'll put that on the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Trillin. Thank you very much. Ian and Yasmin.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the paper as read and just highlight some of the key points. Under the Water Services Arrangements Act, we must legally amend Year 3 of the current LTP to remove water services budgets and activities. No consultation or audit is required, and we propose adopting the amendment in December 2025. Other councils are following the same approach, and our community has already been consulted through the 2025-26 annual plan on their preferred water services delivery model. The amendment itself won't be consulted on, but it will be clearly disclosed with changes reflected in future plans and policy updates. I'll open up for questions.
Fantastic. Do I have any questions? It appears no. So, I think that's pretty straightforward.
Just one question,
Councillor
sorry.
Egan.
So what happens if we adopt this and the timing of water services changes for whatever reason?
Through the Chair, we will have to reassess when that time comes. We're really hoping it won't, but yes, we're cautiously optimistic that it won't.
Yeah, just to reiterate, we'd have to react accordingly. From a numbers perspective, it's a reasonably easy pivot to make, and I'm looking at Graham because he would be doing it. But it would, spawn a new process to get an amended LTP, if depending on the timeline of that decision. It would be uncharted and awkward.
So if our debt didn't transfer on due date, then that would instigate a change in...
Yeah, look, the debt is a really interesting issue, and it's currently being considered within the central project team. The reality, there's a couple of different options, ways that this could play out. Debt could immediately transfer on the day one of the organisation. I think that's everyone's preference. However, the realities of actually making that happen may mean that it's a longer transition. We're working with, actually, no, sorry, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we will make sure that we will work with a recognised industry leader in the Treasury space to make sure that the transition and the transfer of that debt is in a logical way where neither of the two parties is handicapped by the decision, so it's a fair and reasonable
and that's
approach.
Encompassed in this these recommendations?
Yeah, so through the Chair, the matter is that we would have, by the time we put together the amended long-term plan, direction from the centre as to which way we will go in terms of the debt management. So whichever way they decide, we will accommodate that within our reporting of the amended long-term plan.
Yeah.
There's just some intricacies of how this will work, which are still being investigated and determined.
Councillor Trillin.
Thanks very much. Yeah, just a question actually around the proposal to adopt the amendment December of this year, and just thinking about obviously just heading into the elections. The work that needs to be done to enable the adoptment in December, is there much work there that at a council level councillors will need to be involved in? And I guess that the reason I ask that is this is quite a substantial change, and in the event that there's substantial change around the council table, which there very well could be, do we have confidence that there'll be enough time to work with new councillors to develop the degree of understanding that they need to make decisions around this in December?
It is a big change to the balance sheet, but it's a relatively, I say relatively straightforward transaction. There's not a lot of councillor time involved. It would be important for councillors to understand the impact of this, but the substantive decision has already been made. In fact, about whether this council will go into Metro Water as we're styling it currently. So there is not an audit requirement, there is not a consultation requirement, because that substantive decision has already taken place. So we will need to be quite careful about a whole range of things, and we'll be wanting to keep elected members well abreast of the impact, because it's a very big change to the nature of council's business, and it will take a while to work through that, just in our brains really, in terms of what that will mean long term, because we are distancing ourselves from a number of decisions about water services, most of them in fact, and we have, it's called a council controlled organisation, but there is less control. So I think everyone's understood that, but there's nuances in it, but the actual transaction, to get to an amended long-term plan is not that difficult.
Oh, thank you very much.
I just add something through the chair, just to be aware that the primary focus where new councillors will be putting their emphasis will be in the annual plan, which would follow after Christmas, and the work that we would do with that as we would normally do. So it's pretty mechanical otherwise. Okay.
Fantastic. I think we've covered it really well there, and I think splitting a long-term amendment is the right approach, because it's only going to get murkier. So I would like to put the motion of the 6 recommendations. I will not read them all this time round, but yes, the 6 recommendations as tabled. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Item 7.5, managing council's interest rate risk while debt will transfer to Metro Water. Graham, come on down. Do need to move it to get it on the table first. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Trillen, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to table the PwC report, which I noticed that we received after this was sent. I think it's been copied out to all the audit and risk. This is the letter. This is the letter from yeah. Okay. Thank you. So this is a heads up to the audit and risk, and then to approve to us to adopting an option in terms of how we're going to handle as we've been talking about in the earlier reports around the debt transfer to Metro Water and the impact on council and council's treasury positioning in terms of hedging that debt. So there's 2 options. We can either keep to our policy and we would have to take out more hedging. Unfortunately, what we believe is that will make council in a worse position in terms of being over-hedged post-water reform and the debt transfer. Or else we seek approval to have sort of not enough cover in terms of policy, but it's a conscious decision not to take out additional cover because of that will potentially make us in a overhedged position post-water reform. And as we've talked before about with Ian, is that there's still a lot of uncertainty around the timing of how the debt will transfer and the mechanisms in terms of how that will then proceed and the timing of it. So there's quite a lot of uncertainty. And so the other thing, as we're saying, is that this is temporary, and we'll come back to audit and risk at its next meeting and do an update and do this. So it's a temporary measure. Is because of the uncertainty. I suppose that's it.
Councillor Leggett.
Just a question. I mean, I agree with the option. I don't think we've got any other option really. But is the cost of these short-term commercial papers higher than what we might otherwise do?
I believe it's less. It's lower.
It's lower. Hey, you should have said that.
Councillor Trillin.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I broadly agree with this approach as well. Just clarification around the recommendation of temporarily breaching the investment liability management policy. Are there any implications that we should be aware of breaching that policy? Is that something that S&P cares about, for example?
No, it's a council decision, and it's a council policy. So council can change the policy. We're not asking council yet to change the policy until we know more about what the debt transfer will be, and then if necessary, we can come back to council with we need to amend the policy to whatever. We're just asking for a temporary allowance not to be or to comply with policy. That's all.
So through the chair, the S&P actually are more specifically interested in the free cash flow. And they are also interested in the pre-funding of capital for the year ahead. They wouldn't look at this.
Okay, cool. So as long as there's a clear justification and it's temporary, which is what we're doing here, there's no real issues that council needs to be conscious of with temporarily breaching the policy. Okay, cool. In that case, I'm comfortable. Thank you very much.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, I also agree broadly with what's happening with it. In the letter from EY, the additional non-compliance considerations said there remains the possibility that the transfer could occur on a staggered basis over several years. Several years? And what sort of impact would that have on us?
Well, that's been discussed before, and I've done some modelling on this. I mean, and the discussions are that it'll be back-to-back, so there may be a back-to-back arrangement over a 4 to 5 year period. I mean, that's one of the options the central team is discussing. So I don't know if Ian's got more to say.
Yeah, it's a live issue that we're working through because we have to look at the new Metro Water organisation, their ability to actually dive into the market and raise hundreds of millions of dollars of debt, and the cost to that new organisation to do so may be prohibitive in itself. So, all of these things we will be working with a duly authorised Treasury advisor to consider all of these questions. So it hasn't been resolved yet, but it needs to be resolved within the next few weeks / months, and we should have something better for you at the next, Audit and Risk Committee meeting about the way forward. But it is possible, to do it like that, and it is possible that it might drag out for a number of years. The reality we haven't landed on yet, or not the reality, the decision has not been made yet. It's got to work for both entities.
Yeah, I have always been pretty hot on the idea of the debt transferring on day one. I've had a dawning recognition that may not work for either party, so I think there is some complexity in it, and it is a finely judged. It will be a more nuanced approach, I think. It's clear now that we've got closer. As you get closer, you think about these things a bit more, and you think, it's a very substantial amount of debt that the new entity would have to raise, and it would impact the same people who are paying our rates. So we have to be even-handed about all of this and sensible.
Councillor Leggett.
So I hear that, and I appreciate that it'll be the same people paying. However, rate pay. When we're moving forward on this and the nuances, we want to make sure that our ratepayers, like the people that pay rates now, are not unfairly disadvantaged. You're talking about quid pro quo, so you're talking about balance and knowing that the same people are going to be paying anyway at some stage.
It goes a little bit to the LGFA position on the way that's managed and how that debt's transferred, and whether it has any impact on our ability to raise money for the things that we need to do. We've had some assurance around that, and we will seek to shore that up so that the impact, that we don't want to be left in a worse position.
No.
Yeah.
No. Okay, thanks.
Fantastic. All right, I think we've canvassed it pretty well there, and I think we're, we're doing right by what is needed of us. So yes, we will take the tabled memo. Thank you very much, and I am going to put the motion with the recommendations that we receive the report, agree to approve option 2 as it minimises the overhedged post Three Waters position until more certainty is known of the amount and timing of the debt transfer to Metro Water. Agree to recommend that Council approve a temporary breach of the investment and liability management policy for the interest rate risk minimum 5-year maturity band until November 2025. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Item 7.6, Treasury Investment and Liability Management Quarterly Compliance Report. Graham. I need to move to get it onto the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Leggett, thank you. Carry on, Graham.
Thank you, Chair. This is quite simple, I hope. It's the normal quarterly compliance report, and it shows that we're fully compliant with policy. As at June, this is as at June, the end of the year, the financial year.
Fantastic. Any questions? Well done. Good job, team. All right, I will now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Item 7.7, Risk and Assurance Update. I'll move the motion to get it on the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duncan, thank you very much. Thanks. Phyllis.
Kia ora koutou, through you, Chair. So this paper is an update on Q1's risk and assurance plan. So just maybe I've just highlight a couple of things in the report, if I may. I just want to note that in terms of good news, I'm really pleased about the internal controls, internal policies where we managed to get 99% update, and there's a consistent process on it. And if you can recall, a year ago, we started with 60% of our policies needing update. And so I'm actually really personally pleased with this, and I feel that we have an ongoing process to sustain this. And this is important because internal policies do kind of guide the strength of our internal control environment. It lets our people know what to do, and it keeps us safe. So just one thing to just kind of point out in terms of how well management has done in this space. The other bit to just note is around the status of audit recommendations. I've provided a bit more information about the items that we've closed this quarter, a couple of high risk items and a moderate one. And the open items that are still in progress, there are 7 of them. Those relate to procurement and sensitive expenditure, and management is working through them. So that's about it in terms of introduction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Phyllis. Have we got any questions? No, another straightforward report. Thank you very much, Phyllis. I will now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. I now move that we go into public excluded, and that Sam Nicole and Kieran Wright from Ernst & Young be permitted to remain in the meeting. Could I please have a seconder? Councillor Leggett, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. We'll just wait a moment.